I acknowledge that I live, work, and learn on Gadigal country. I recognise with gratitude the safe haven offered to my family at a time when life and a future were uncertain. I recognise the ongoing connections to lands, waters, and skies of all traditional custodians across Australia. I pay my respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and elders past and present. To those of you who have joined us here in Australia, Poland, in Israel and the United States, welcome and good evening. Dobry wieczór, dzień dobry and shalom. My name is Estelle Roginski and I am the co-vice president of the Australian Society of Polish Jews and their Descendants. For those of you who are unfamiliar with our organisation, our statement of purpose is to preserve and promote the historical and cultural heritage of Jewish life in Poland and foster understanding between current and future generations of the Polish and Jewish communities. We do this at ASPJ in a variety of ways. Last month, we hosted Dr. Michał Trembacz, Director of the Jewish Historical Institute in Warsaw, who provided us with an overview of the Institute's role and extensive archival documents. Then we were privileged to hear a musical recital by Karolina Mikołajczyk and Iwo Jedinecki, excuse my pronunciation, sorry. And next month, we have a very interesting event on December 10th, where we meet online the Director of Festivals, Michael Rubenfeld, and his Culture Doc series, which explores Polish Jewish artists and the impact of the 7th of October on their practice and in the larger context of the Polish Jewish landscape. Just before I introduce our main event, we welcome Franek Bojancik, I hope I got it right this time, a researcher at POLIN, available to assist all of us as descendants of Polish Jewish heritage with our research. Please welcome Franek.
Good evening. Well, I was just about to say good morning because it's actually 9:30 a.m. here, but very good evening to all of you. Thank you for this opportunity. We're really grateful to be with you today or tonight, Matan and I. We both work at the museum, and my role is maybe not as much as to research, but rather to assist people with this Polish connection, with Polish roots, Polish Jewish roots, with what they're looking for. I joined the museum this year in January 2024 to become kind of a special envoy for global outreach, which is raising awareness of what we do in Poland and also assisting those with roots, with Jewish roots in Poland, with whatever they feel like doing. So I'm reaching out to communities, to Jewish communities across the globe. One of our most important and most valuable partners are in Australia. We are opening a new gallery of our core exhibition, which is dedicated to the descendants of Polish Jews across the globe next year in June 2025. And one of the stories that we share in that gallery is actually from Australia. So we're really happy to be here today. I will share soon my email address in the chat section. If there are any questions, if there is anything that interests you, POLIN Museum is also your museum. We like to say at the museum that your story began here. It began in Poland. It might have begun in Poland, and we're here also for you. So whatever you need from us, we are there. Unfortunately, due to our limited resources, we are unable to help with, all research that you are doing or research your particular family story. Matan will soon be talking. He will be talking about ways to do your research. We can help you with some parts of that. We cannot, unfortunately, do the whole research for you, but you can email me at any time. You can email Matan, and you will see. We will see how much can we help you with. So we are here for you, and we'll be more than happy if you visit us in 2025 for this opening or at any other time, as POLIN Museum is proud to tell the 1,000-year-long history of Polish Jews and their descendants also across the universe. So thank you, Estelle, and Matan will have the most important part here tonight, but you'll receive my email address and I will be here for you today, tomorrow, 2025 and more.
Thank you, Franek. That's a very exciting initiative, and we look forward to the opening of the new gallery that includes some of us as well. That's wonderful. And now to our main event. Here is Matan Shefi to help us discover our roots. Just a little bit about Matan before he begins his presentation. Matan was born and raised in Israel and is a graduate of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Currently, he is the Chief Query Specialist at the POLIN Museum with over 10 years of experience in Jewish genealogy. He collaborates with academic researchers, governmental bodies, writers and families worldwide, helping them uncover the stories of Polish Jewish individuals and their own family histories. Matan will share valuable insights on where and how to find support for your own genealogical research and which tools to use to uncover your family's history. Learn the best practices and techniques to connect with your roots and discover the stories of your ancestors. Over to you, Matan. I look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Yeah, I need to unmute. Hello and good evening, good morning to anyone in my time zone. And thank you very much, Estelle, for your introduction and for the opportunity to be here and talk to you. The presentation will be about how to start with such searches for people who are interested in the history of their families regarding Polish Jews, history of their Jewish family in Poland, let's say. And this is research and a journey. It is very individual. Every person and every family has its story, and every person and every family has its own journey to find those information and the other places to be searching for it. As Franek mentioned, we do not have the capacity and capability to do it individually with every person. I personally wish we had, but it would require a lot of people working around the clock in trying to help around, I don't know, 6 million descendants of Polish Jews to find individual stories and documents. But we can try and help you, and I will touch it later, how we can try and help in finding information online, what is the guidelines we suggest, and what are the sources we think you should know if you want to do this and search for information in your family. So I will share a presentation. I will encourage you to ask questions that I will try and leave 15 minutes at the end to answer. Let me first say this. Please do not ask me very specific individual questions. Like, how do I find the birth of Ezra Kleinbaum in Puławy in 1910? Because it would mean a lot to one person. Save these questions to the email you can send me. But if you have any general questions that might interest the general public, I would be very happy to try and answer and see if I have any meaningful insights on the matter. So let me share the presentation, and I hope you will find it interesting. And yeah, so you can see my name and the email you can write to at the POLIN Museum. It's either to my personal email or to a general email inbox of research of different sorts that we try and give assistance in the museum too. And the POLIN Museum that you can see here is a connection to your roots, and I will start with my own personal story. As Estelle told you, I was born in Israel. I was born to a father coming from the Netherlands and to a mother coming from Poland. My mother was born in Warsaw after the war in 1951. And when she was 6 years old, 1957, she and her parents moved to Israel. Poland was not spoken of. The family was very much Polish. My grandparents spoke Polish between them. My mother spoke Polish to them. But they never talked about their life in Poland. Not about the life before the war, not about the war, definitely. They were very silent about this, but not even about the 12 years after the war, when they chose to stay in Poland before immigration. And I can say that my grandfather, who comes from a long-time Warsavian family, had a real difficulty talking about his family. And I can say that even in an anecdote, I didn't know much about his parents. He never talked much. He never told them how they were, his relationship with them, etc. But when I started my journey and when I found some things, I found that my great-grandfather's fabric store was standing in Gainsha Street number 6. Gainsha Street does no longer exist because it changed its name. It's changed its name to Anielewicza Street. And Anielewicza Street number 6 is the building that you see in front of you and the building that I am actually now sitting in. So the museum, even in a very physical way, is a continuation of my own story, of my own private family history. In the same address, my great-grandfather had a store that went bankrupt. He was arrested because he owed money, etc., etc. We won't get into this. This is the place that tells also his story. The museum is walking a fine line between telling a general story and really touching private histories of private people. For many visitors, it's a story about them or a story about things of the past. But I guess to people in this virtual room, it's a very personal story. It's a story about us. And at the museum, we value this and we see this and we're trying to engage us in this story. This is why a walk in the museum is also a little walk in memory lane. The current temporary exhibition, which is about to close, unfortunately, you won't see it if you'll come here, is about memories of the Jewish shtetl in the minds of those who left it and in the minds of those who stayed there, and is dedicated to the town of Opatów. But you would have such experiences of visiting those places and reimagining those times and spheres going through the museum. And one of the best examples is this, what picture you see on the top left side. It's called the Jewish Street. It's in the interwar gallery, and it's a description of how a bustling Jewish commercial street looked like, and all it had, the cinema, the youth movements, the political life, the social life, the art, the music, the culture, all the Jewish experience in a street that was very dense and very community orientated, let me say this. So visiting the museum is also a way to connect and reimagine those places and times. And I'll try and get more practical and walk you through what does it mean to search your roots in Poland. And the first question is, I won't ask with the question, what are your roots? But I will get to the question, what is Poland? Because Poland is a term that is shifting in time. Poland is a way to describe people. Poland is a way to describe a culture. It is a way to describe a country or a geographical area. And this has changed throughout time, both also the cultural, the ethnical, and also the geographical term of what is Poland. If we are looking at the map here at the left, Poland of today is in red. Poland of interwar times was much shifted to the east. So Poland was after the war shifted to the west. What we can see here with blue lines overlining it is Poland of the interwar period. So areas which are nowadays in Lithuania, in Belarus, or in Ukraine used to be parts of Poland. And areas which are now parts of Poland used to belong to Germany. So tracing your roots in Poland might mean that you would have German roots, German Jewish roots in the city of Breslau, which is part of today's Poland, or that you would have roots in area called Galicia, which its residents used to call themselves Polish Jews and would speak Polish and would very much associate themselves with the country of Poland. It gets complicated when we go back in time, and the smaller map here shows us divisions between Polish crown lands here in red and Lithuanian crown lands, Lithuanian duchy that were incorporated together in a Polish-Lithuanian Union and Commonwealth around the 16th century. But Poland used to be, if one thing we can take from this slide, that Poland used to look different, and Poland was much bigger than what we consider Poland nowadays. So people who were from Żytomir, or even from Kiev, used to live under the Polish crown. In many cases, at the time, people identified as Polish Jews, but there is a chance that you would have a Polish connection or a Polish relation, or someone who left Poland and says, we are Polish, and it would be lands that are very much not in Poland nowadays. It doesn't mean that we can help with everything. Archival documentation is, in many cases, very local kept and local taken care of. But it means that we do have to keep this in mind. What is Poland? What does a person that calls himself Polish or a Polish Jew, where do they might come from? And what does it mean when we are searching for information? And this is the more geographical administrational division of Poland in the interwar period, but this is of less importance. And now, to how do we find information? Because finding information about people is something which varies and can be found in many things. It can be transferred by stories. It can be found in old newspapers. It can be found in old documents, or it can be found in books published 150 years ago. But when we talk about genealogy, we usually talk about information you can find about the average person. And one thing we can say about the average person is usually that they were born. In most cases, they died. And in many cases, they lived somewhere, and this residence was registered. And so the bread and butter of genealogy records, even if someone lived for his whole life or their whole life at the same place, would require some kind of registry of birth, marriage, if there was a marriage in the life, death, if this was documented and was kept, and some kind of residence information. So the bread and butter of those searches are those local kept two types of records. One of them is vital records, also called BMD, because they are referring to birth, marriage, and death, and books of residence, or any kind of residential information to be kept. Those are usually kept by local authorities. They are kept by the city hall in terms of contemporary information. So when my kids were born in Warsaw, you need to go to the city hall registry office and register their birth. The city hall is keeping those registries for the time that they are under privacy restriction. In case of birth registries, it's 100 years. And after 100 years, books of registries are transferred from the local organization to regional archival, national archival institutions. Books of residence have similar paths from local administration to regional archival institutions. But this is, of course, not all the information that can be found. There's also information which is more voluntarily, I would say, information that people write on gravestones. And here you can find this is the gravestone, the matseva of the great-grandmother of Andrew Reichel, who some of you might know, and is an Australian citizen and resident, and a longtime partner and colleague of the POLIN Museum and also a volunteer. He's contemporary in Polish, if I'm not mistaken, but not sitting with me in the room. So this is a gravestone of his great-grandmother, which allowed us to find links to different family members, because on her gravestone, it says that she's the descendant of a specific rabbi and a descendant from the mother's side of a different kind of rabbi. And through this lineage, which is, of course, a voluntary information, she and her family basically chose to write on her gravestone, is something that allowed us to learn more and get more information and become in touch with more family members. A different kind of source, also voluntarily, is obituaries, or what you can find in newspapers. So if you would see this page from about 100 years ago, from a Jewish newspaper in the Polish language called Nasz Przegląd. So there is a necrology section, and you have family members of people who are notifying others about the death of their beloved ones, and this always includes some information. So it usually tells us who are the people mourning this person. It's his, in case of this, Stanislawa Talgrin, so it's her husband and her 2 daughters and 1 son and grandchildren. Sometimes it would give us the address. Sometimes it would give us the reason for death, which will allow us to find more information about the family and know a little more about the circumstances of the life of and death of the people involved. So those are also very valuable sources, and sometimes you can find them. And there are more relevant sources which are very specific to the life story of different individuals. And here I showed you some. I will start with the upper right-hand side, which is the website of the Jewish Historical Institute. That if you were at the last month's event, you met Dr. Michał Trębacz, the head of the institution, which has a great archives, mostly regarding World War II documentation and post-war registration. There is the Institute for National Remembrance, Instytut Pamięci Narodowej, which has information about persecution by German and Polish communist authorities of specific individuals. There's the ITS, International Tracing Services, that has information about post-war immigrants and non-citizens, displaced persons, and also from German camp, the German camp system. So people who were fleeing Poland after the war and emigrated to the West, Australia included in the West. Usually people would have information in this website and through this chain of displaced camp network, and also local National Library of Poland, which has a great collection of Polish language historical press. The Israeli Library has a great collection. The Israeli National Library has a great collection of Jewish historical press in different languages, English, Polish, and mostly Yiddish language, that is also very useful when searching for information about Jews in Poland before the war. And so, but to search in those institutions, we would have to really understand the life story and the events of specific individuals. And I would definitely also note that our museum has a small collection, but that can be very helpful in terms of getting to know information about specific individuals. And this would be through our web portal of the Virtual Städte. This is an encyclopedia of the Jewish history and culture in Poland, which is basically organized on a local basis. The best thing to do there is search for information about specific towns, cities, or places. And you would get their information about where was the synagogue and where was the cemetery, and about the history of the community and important events in the life of the community and of individuals in the community. And when you get to a town like this, and you would see all the categories, one of them is genealogy. And if you go into genealogy, in this case of the town of Schlesien, you would have some documents that are kept by National Archives, but were indexed and made available also by scans through our work and are available through the museum. So this is also a valuable source. It mainly has information about passport applications and citizenship status from between the 1920s and 1950s. So this is the best chance for you to find anything is if you're looking for information from this time and this area. This is something that just to get your eyes on it, there are many branches of regional archives in Poland, and each one holds its own collection and is taking care of its collection in terms of making sure it's available for people who are interested, but also in terms of scanning and uploading things online, and understanding which archive holds the information you are interested in is an essential part in understanding how to search and where to search. So after covering the generals, I want to show you how it looks like and what kind of information can you find in those kind of documents. And starting with books of residence. Books of residence, yeah, maybe I will start, I'll do it the other way around. I will start with birth registries. It's a little simpler. A birth registry is usually a story. It depends where in Poland. In former Austrian lands, it's not the same as in former Russian lands, but I will go with this line because it's most of Polish territory. Every registry of birth, marriage, and death is a story being told. It says that on this day and that day, in this case, 2nd of January 1921, on 11 a.m. in the town of this and that, in this case, it's Siedlce, came this person. In this case, you can see it in the blue frame. It's called Aaron Ubogi. His trade is a tailor, krawiec, his age. And then it tells us that he came with 2 witnesses and what are their names, and they're of no importance to the specific event. And it tells us that he's here at the registry office to register and report a birth that took place in the town of Siedlce in 12th of May 1908 on 10 p.m. And this birth occurred to his legal wife, Hanna, maiden name Piekarz, I'm sorry, and she is 33 years old. It's 33. I'm sorry for the mistake here in the writing. And the baby was born, and a name was given to this baby, and it is Rivka. So it's basically a story. It's not a table. It's not a formula. It is a formula, but it's being told as a story. But it gives us the essential information. What is the name of the baby born? When was the baby born? Who are the parents? What is their age? What does the father do for a living? When do they register the birth? Sometimes it has additional information, like those people are official residents of this place and that place. Sometimes when the father is deceased or the mother is deceased, it tells us about this baby. Sometimes you can find through this information that that the registry of birth took many years after the birth itself. Like in this case, the registry is 1921 and the birth took place in May 1908. So registering something, a birth, or registering an event 13 years after it happened tells us something first about the relationship of this family with the authorities, and raises question is why now? There are many different answers to give. Sometimes the why now is because something is happening and they need to straighten their bureaucratical status. They're moving, they're getting married, something's happening. And sometimes it's easier now, and the status of the administration changed. 1921, independent country of Poland. 1908, Russian control, Siedoce is under Tsarist Russia. So this is the kind of information you can expect from those vital records. Another things about vital records is this is an event frozen in time. Maybe 2 days later, this Rivka dies. We don't know. This information is correct or should be correct to the time that it is given. If it changes a day after, usually you won't see it in the registry itself, which is not the case in those types of information like residency information, books of residence. This would give you not one event, but the picture of who is living in a specific place, and usually it's a whole household. So you would have father, mother, and children living under the same roof. You would have the place, and this is Konstantinov Wudsky, the street, the house number, and this is all of the people who are living under the same roof. For each person, you would have first name, last name, maiden name for the mother, parents' names, where and when they were born. So not only age, but exact date of birth and place of birth, civic status, occupational status, and here later on the second page, you would have what happened later in life, or is anything changes. So if one of the kids is registering with the authorities and is getting a personal ID, you would have it here in the notes. If someone is straightening their military status with the military authorities, it is here. If someone dies, it is noted here, and they are crossed from this books of residence. If someone gets married and moves to a different household, it is noted and they are crossed because they are no longer living under the same roof. So if vital records are an event frozen in time, this is a breathing, living document which can be changed and updated. And every 10 years, the authorities open a new book, or 30 years, it depends on the time, to allow further updates on the status. And now, how do we get to those kind of information? So actually, I would start with this, because this website is basically the first stop in most genealogy searches. And this is called JRI Poland. It's an North American Canadian organization, which did an amazing work in indexing and uploading indexes of vital records of Polish Jews online. And you can search it. You need to register. It's free of charge. And when you search, you can search it by name, by place, in different ways, and you get results on a geographical division. So if you search the last name Brachfeld, you can see that there are in Krakow area, in Stanislavov area, in Warsaw area, Lublin area, etc. And when you go, let's say, to Siedoce area, I think in this case, you get a table like this that shows you that in 1880, M, marriage number 4, is between Zelma Noel Brachfeld and Etla Hudes Liechtenstein. And this happened in Radzin Podlaski. And you even have a link to the vital record itself. So this is a very, very valuable search engine and would allow you to get to the records that I mentioned before, especially vital records. In some cases, it also have indexes of books of residence and entries from books of residence, but it would allow you to go to those places. In some cases, when you don't have the link itself, you can go to the yourself to the website of Polish National Archives and go and find their scans of vital records. And I will not go into the process with you, but I wanted to show you that it exists. There is a search engine inside the big website of Polish National Archives to help you find vital records. You need to enter a name of a town, and you can choose from the results which religious denomination you are looking for, because vital records in Poland until World War II were being written separately. So there's a book for Jews, books for Catholics, books for Lutherans, etc. And so if you look for in a specific town, you want to go search in the Jewish records, and then you get this kind of page that shows you which books for which year exist and how many scans. And then you can go and have a look at the scans. And each record here that you see is actually something like this that you would need to read. Sometimes it's in Polish, sometimes it's in Russian, but it's at least you have the information itself. But there are more sources that are available, especially when we are talking about Holocaust survivors. And this is something that I wanted to show you and let you know that exists. The things on the, let's start with the right-hand side because it's easier. A very common source that I'm sure you know of, but maybe not have used to the full extent, is information from Yad Vashem, and especially pages of testimonies given by people to Yad Vashem along the years, where people, in an attempt to document the names and stories of the victims of the Holocaust, gave information in what is called a page of testimony about a specific person. So in this case, a person called Isaac Chepwe is writing about his sister, Chaya Chepwe, and he's telling us where was she born, when was she born, what are the parents' names, when did she perish, and in what circumstances, to the best of his knowledge. And as this is information coming from a brother about a person, we can assume that it's accurate, right? He knew her parents' names because it's his parents' names. He knew where was she born because it's very likely where he was born. So this is a very intimate and accurate source of this specific information. And for the same family, if Isaac Chepwe has survived the war, so with other family members, after the war, he left Poland into DP camps and emigrated from Europe. And this is what you see at the upper right-hand side, DP, the displaced person camps registration record. And it gives us, once again, quite detailed information about this person, names of parents, in many cases, address before the war, or at least last residence in case of a town, and here it's Lodz. And it's where do those people want to go? In this case, they want to go to the US. I can tell you they ended up in Israel, this family. And it tells us also information about them, from the languages they speak to information about what happened to them through the war. And in this case, you can see that they were in Auschwitz on the bottom right-hand side. KZ Auschwitz and then Flessenburg, I'm sorry. And in the left-hand side, it's about a different family. You would have a post-war registry from Polish sources, and mainly the Central Committee of Polish Jews. And this is a collection of records after the war, which is nowadays it's stored and administrated by the Jewish Historical Institute in Warsaw, but it has detailed information about people, about Polish Jews who were in Poland after the war, and it would give us dates of birth, names of parents, addresses, where they were throughout the war, if they have other members of the family in different places. In this case, Natan Rathauser, who is an engineer, is telling us where he was throughout the war, and he says he was in the Soviet Union, and he gives the names of the towns, Nizhny Rug and Magnitogorsk. He's giving his actual address after the war in Szczecin, and he tells that he has a brother, Naftali Rathauser, in Palestine. It's 1946. Israel is not yet a state. It tells us the information about his parents. His father is Moshe and his mother is Paulina, maiden name Zelechowska, and an accurate date and place of birth, Warsaw, 1914, December 21st. There's also a handwritten card for this person in the same place, but you can see that the information is not exactly coherent. Here he gives 1911 as year of birth, and he gives only quite general information about the Soviet Union, and his residence at the same year 1946, is in Warsaw, Telemana 3, apartment number 1, and here it's in Szczecin. So different information comes from the same person, even at the same year, and in many cases we need to bridge this or understand why it is conflicted and how do we move forward from this. Immigration is in many cases a very essential part of the search, because it gives us an anchor to start with. I know I have little time, but I want to say something like this. In many cases, the key to finding information is knowing how to start, or getting the most accurate information to start with. Because when people talk to me and want to start this kind of process, the first question I have to them, okay, tell me what you know about your family's history. And depending on what you will say, I will think of where information might be found. And in many cases, people have very vague idea and information of the people. Sometimes they know the names only after immigration, and then people change the names. In this case, you can see it's a story from the US, but someone calls Maurice Brooks. And I can tell you that he was born as Moritz Bruckstein, Moshe Bruckstein, I'm sorry, Moshe Aaron, if I remember correctly. But you need to come away from this Maurice Brooks and the English version of the name, and to find the source of when exactly this person was born, in which name were they born, and where. And so in this case, and it's an American story, but it would tell you also a valuable lesson, I would assume, to Australia, through, I think this would be World War II registry or something of the sort. And it only gives us a date of birth and Poland, and they lived in upstate New York, next to in Buffalo. But it would give us information that would allow to find ship manifest information about when this specific family came into Poland. And in the ship manifest, there would be a town of origin. So a town called Kolo would be, you can see it here, would be added into an equation. So we have Moritz Brooks from Kolo. This page of ship manifest would give us the original surname, Bruckstein. But even this wasn't enough, because if we search in Kolo for the name Bruckstein and the approximate years of birth, as I try to show you it's possible, you would have at least 5 different people who are suspects to be this Moritz, right? It can be Michał, it could be Michał Mayer, it could be Michael Shemes, it could be Moshe Yaakov, or it could be Michał Wigdor. Which one would be later Moritz? And even the date of birth, which was here exact, none of them really matches. What ended the process is information from the grave. So a website called Billion Graves show you this kind of vague picture. And if you give $5 donation, you would get the exact, very clear picture of the grave. And in this case, it shows that Maurice it has the Hebrew name and the father's name. If you know some Hebrew, here it says Moshe Yaakov ben Rabbi Zelig. So Moshe Yaakov, son of Zelig. And if you would go over all of the suspects I noted here, for one of them, it would says Moshe Yaakov, and the father's name is Zelig. So when you go back to the vital records and the story they tell, you can find the specific person, because we had enough information about them to cross-reference. And this is important and crucial. So getting the most accurate information, the fullest information about the family and those individuals is really important to be looking at a specific place. Another thing that I would encourage you to do is just dig the archives. Even if you don't have very specific information, sometimes the archival information can be quite full and quite well organized to help you find information if you do not have specific stories, specific names, specific dates, etc., etc. And I wanted to give a case of Zduńska Wola also because a part of Estelle's family is coming from there. And if you would go through the website of the Polish National Archives and find the archival collection called Akta Miasta Zduńskiej Woli, records of the city of Zduńska Wola, which is kept in the regional archives in Sieradz, you would find that in this collection you would have a unit called Skorowiec do Ksiąg Ludności Stałej. So it's an alphabetical key to books of permanent residence, and it's for the years 19. I don't see the years exactly, but around 1920s and 30s. And this is an alphabetical key that allows you to find specific registries. And so you here see the names of people, and it would send you to the specific registry. So you would have the volume number and the house number where those people might be found. So if you're looking for the Albeck family, so you can see the people in house number 47 are the first three ones, and the people in house number 33, Pascal and Baiga, if I read correctly, are to be found in this way. And when you have this, you can go and find the book of residence, Księgi Ludności Stałe, house number is 19 and 48, and you would get the specific information about the specific family that you found here. So in this case, in specific towns, even by knowing vaguely the names of people, ages, more or less, you can get to very detailed information. And as I mentioned before in the books of residence, this is a quite detailed and a quite breathing document. You can see that 3 people here are crossed because they got married and moved to different registries. You can see that you have information about where the father and mother of the family came from, and you have information about citizenship status for other members of the family, either based on their military service or based on them getting a personal ID. And so this kind of detailed information is also something that it can be found by digging the archive and understanding which kind of collection are there for the specific town I am interested in. I would really recommend going over our own guidelines for how to go on with such a search. You can find this online in the link that you can see now on the screen, or if you even Google POLIN Museum Genealogy ABC, it would lead you to this website. There are links to all the databases and websites I was talking before, and it would give you some kind of also dictionary to the terms which are appropriate to search in Poland, and would basically try and guide you or give you the tips to start and conduct the search like I showed you here now. And so I would really recommend for people who are beginners or even intermediate at this kind of genealogy in Poland to go over and visit those links and read those tips. And I think this would be it from me for now, and I would gladly open this for comments and questions if anyone has any.
Hi, if you'd like to ask a question, the chat is probably a good place to write a question, or you can, I think you can ask Matan directly. I'm not sure whether that's possible. At the moment, no questions coming up, Matan. You did such a thorough job that everybody's very happy.
I was talking too fast, I assume.
No, not at all.
Hi, so we have one question. How does a non-Polish speaker navigate all of this? It's from Jeff, I believe, from the username. But yeah, Matan, are you happy to take that?
Yes, gladly. So first, my condolences. As a person who didn't learn Polish growing up, Polish is not a very easy language to master, but it's also not very difficult. Basically, most of those records are like repeating themselves, right? There is a very limited vocabulary you need to know to understand this. And I'm saying this both in Poland and also in Russian, which is also a very common language for this for those records for in many cases of research. So one way is learning those languages, or at least learning the vocabulary relevant to those the vital records and the records we are in question. Another thing that I would say, so this is if you're really getting into it and you want to get to the bottom of it. Second, there are many ways online to help you with this. So Polish is written in Latin alphabet. So reading it is usually not very difficult, and using even a simple Google Translate to the information you would find would be a good solution. There are other kind of advanced tools for people online, from OCR reading of handwritten documents in different languages, in Polish and Russian. Most of them are paid services. I have to say that I'm not an expert because I'm not using them. I don't need them, but I know other people are using them, and people who are reading in documents in languages that they do not master and they do not know of. So this is also an option. And one thing that I would say for sure, that our guidelines would have also has also their link to basic terms that you would need to know to even understand what's going on. And I think the most basic terms you need to know are how are names of collections in archives, because if you go what I show you, Akta Miasta Zduńskiej Woli, and you see there are lists of 250 items, you want to know what do you have there. Maybe you have the city council reviewing the street names, and maybe you have books of residence or records on how to build the synagogue. So the difference is kind of striking. And on our website and on our links, we have a small dictionary of essential terms that you would need to know and would really help you in understanding what kind of information are you facing. I hope that this is a slightly, somewhat satisfying answer.
Thank
That
you
was
so much, Matan. I'm sorry, over to you, Estelle.
Oh, no, that's okay. So there's a question from Rita. How was the information for the books of residence collected?
Okay, that's a very good question, and I don't have a very good answer for this. Basically, people were obligated to register their residence and to announce different changes to their status to the administration and to the authorities. As we saw from the registry of Aaron Ubogi for the birth of his daughter Rivka, for 13 years he didn't tell anyone a daughter was born. So it has to do with the official obligation of people to inform the authorities, and to what do people do with this obligation? Do they obey? Do they live with this? Of course, 1850 is not 1920 in relationship between authorities and the bureaucratic control of institutions on people's lives. Right now, you cannot breathe without certain institutions and authorities knowing about this. But and I'm not talking about Jews living in Poland, in a country they felt they do not belong in, or anything like this. I'm just talking about strict bureaucratic control of institutions on people's lives. It looked different in 1920 than it does look now, and it looked different in 1850 than it looked in 1920. So basically, people had to come and notify the authorities, in several cases, the authorities had to go in, and every 10 years, go to each household and go and make a census and see that the information that they have in the books of residence is exactly what they have now in the physical sense in the household. But it really varies, and it varies in time and in place. Once again, my answer is not very good because there is not one answer. It really varies. And I think that instead of, it's a very interesting question. How was it collected and how was it made? But I think when we're looking for information about specific families, it's the other way around. We see the information. What do we learn from it? Instead of thinking about how the authorities is collecting it, let's understand what the information we see about the family telling about this family. Let's not think from the administrative side, but from the average person side. What does the information we see tell about them? Because once again, the fact that someone is not registering a daughter for 13 years can mean something. Maybe he had children that died at a young age and he doesn't want to register her because she might die, and why go through the mess and involve the authorities in your personal mourning. Maybe it's because, once again, the control of the authorities changed. Maybe he needs something by this registry. There are, 20 possible explanations, but thinking about those explanations, not from the administrative side, but from the personal from the private personal perspective, I think is more beneficial in this kind of search and understanding.
Oh, thank you. That was a very insightful. There's a quick yes, no, I hope question for you from Lena. Were register books kept in Galician towns?
So registry books of birth, marriage, and death were definitely kept in Galician towns, and most of them were transferred into Poland and are kept by an archive in Warsaw called AGAD, Archiwum Główne Akt Dawnych, the main archive for old documents, if I'm trying to translate the name. So yes, vital records. So for Galicia, all of this information has been kept and was taken by the authorities. Vital records were transferred to Poland. Local information stayed in the Galician towns. So it depends if we're talking about Western Galicia nowadays in Poland or Eastern Galicia nowadays in Ukraine, but you can have residency registry and other local or geographical specific information still in archives in Galicia. And there are three main archives for this area. One of them is, two of them are in Lviv, formerly Lvov or Lemberg in Yiddish, one in Ivano-Frankivsk, previously Stanislavov, and one of them in Ternopil, previously Tarnopol. So Ukrainian archives are kind of hard to contact and get information from in the current times for understandable reasons. But generally speaking, this information is kind of out there.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm going to put these two questions together for you. There's one from Jack, which says, where does one start, especially if the family history is vague or unknown? Which I think is a good question. And the second one, which I'm putting together with that, is Eva Collins went to the Genealogy Museum and couldn't find much information on her family. Where else can she search, please? So part one is,
sorry.
yeah.
So saying the family history is vague can mean many different things. I think a very useful question is, who is the last person to be born in Poland and leave the country, and then try to tell their story. And then going from more recent events to earlier events. So let's say someone was born in a town in Poland in 1920 and survived the war as an 18, 20-year-old person. say, escaped the Soviet Union, and after the war emigrated to Australia. I'm giving. So you can assume that the immigration happened late 1940s, early 1950s. There might be information from DP camps, even if most people did not emigrate immediately from Soviet Union to Australia. Even if it's geographically closer, the process was coming back to Poland after the war in what's called repatriation, coming back to the homeland, leaving Poland to deportation, to displaced person camps further west, and from there, so Germany, Austria, Italy, etc., France, and immigration from there, whether it's to Israel, United States, Canada, Australia. So DP camps information. So the last place we can find information about this person in Europe, let's say, would be displaced camps person. And before this, registry in Poland when returning from the Soviet Union. And before this, maybe there's someone from the family who stayed in Poland and perished, and there would be documents about how they perished through Yad Vashem and pages of testimony, or through ghetto lists in the JIH, in the Jewish Historical Institute. And before this, we might go to vital records of the family in the place where they lived before, in the town they lived, or in the city they moved into, marriage of the parents. So if a parent was born 1920, maybe we can find his birth registry. Maybe we can find the parents' marriage in 1910 somewhere, something of this sort. So once again, start with the last person to live in Poland, tell his story, even in like big chunks: birth, growing up, war, fleeing to Soviet Union, and then immigration. That would tell you at least 5 events that you can try and find information about. But it has to be specific for a name, and in many cases for a town. The second question that was asked, I went to the Jewish Historical Institute, there was no information. First, it's very hard for me to assess why were there no information. Is it someone who survived the war and no information because they didn't register? Or maybe it's someone who emigrated and it's a town where there's little information in current sources and online search engines. I can give an example. There are several areas in Poland where there's very, very little documentation that have survived. And so if you tell me that your ancestors came from Białystok area and born in the 1920s, moved to Białystok, and from there emigrated in 1937, there's a chance I wouldn't be able to find anything. Maybe the only thing to be found is a local newspaper in Yiddish if they had a store or anything like this. Okay. Very, very, very little documentation. And there are areas in Belarus where there is information, but it's not available through search engines. So once again, it's very hard for me to reply. I hope it's okay. And
hang on, sorry, it's my mistake. I will say
I know we're getting late in time, and I don't want to take.
This one was just the grandparents were from Warsaw, so it was from a big area. Yeah, so I don't know if that changes your answer at all.
So Warsaw is another place where very little information had survived. I can suggest that you would send information about the family to me, to the email I showed you before, either to my personal email or to the research@polin.pl. And sometimes, let's say that in Warsaw, there are specific collections of commerce, of registry of commerce, and other specific information that other specific collections that information can be found. I'm not sure who in JIH did you talk to, but there are some people there who are very experienced. I worked in JIH for 8 years, and my boss was doing this for 25 years, is very experienced. But in some cases, they limit themselves to the collection they would be searching at. So if you would like to send me the specifics of the case and see if there's any suggestions I have, so I would be glad to do this.
Okay. So, my dear friend, Matan, have you got capacity for any more questions, or do we make
I
one
do, gladly.
question? Okay. So I'm just looking here. Is there an archive that could tell you a ghetto or concentration camp, a listing where where a family member may have been taken to? How would you, yeah.
So once again, it really varies on what place are we talking about.
Okay.
And let me give an answer to the two biggest ghettos. So Warsaw, no. Warsaw, the ghetto the city went in flames. The ghetto went in flames. Almost nothing had survived. Almost nothing. It's very, very, very anecdotal and fragmental thing that have survived. There are some lists of people who corresponded with relatives through the American Joint Distribution Committee, JDC, and then you would have a line of the person who got the letter, a line of the person who sent the letter. So you would have an address in Warsaw in the ghetto and an address in the States or in Argentina, or people who corresponded with their relatives abroad. And this is basically all you get. Sometimes in Warsaw Ghetto, you have gas payments information. And in very, very rare cases, for people who died in the ghetto, you have ghetto death registry cards, but there's a few thousand cards from an estimation of 150,000 people who died inside the ghetto, not sent to Treblinka or other camps to be killed, but died inside the ghetto. So a few thousand cards out of 150,000. Very, very fragmental. If you take Lodge, for example, and Estelle, let me apologize for not finding detailed information about your family and not sharing it in the presentation today. Lodge Ghetto is much, much better documented for the sheer reason that the ghetto functioned almost until the end of the war and did not go through the same destruction that Warsaw Ghetto did. And so there is detailed residency registry, death registry, different kinds of residence registry in Lodz, and in some cases also about deportation registry to Chełmno from the Lodz ghetto. So it really depends where your family came from. Lodz is the exception. More places are like Warsaw, where you have either lists of people who were in the ghetto, or in a ghetto at a specific time, and about what happened to them later. There's usually no information. I will try and elaborate a little more about this. Much of how we see World War II and Holocaust registries is determined by what happened in the West. There are lists of deportees from France to Auschwitz and quite detailed documentation. We have to remember that this was not the case in Poland. France was a country, or a functioning country. Even Vichy France and the part of France that were annexed to the German Reich. This was a country with a country apparatus and a civic apparatus. Poland was under military control, and there was no civic apparatus. It was a German military apparatus controlling citizens. It's called occupation. And the little civic administration that functioned did this in an ongoing conflict with the German occupation authorities, and so their ability to register what's going on was very limited. And in many cases, this Polish Jewry and ghettos were liquidated in 1942-43, and there was enough time to cover up the tracks and to erase documentation and destroy documentation about the crimes committed by Germans. And so even if there were ghetto registries, most of them were destroyed. And when it comes to the killing itself, and I'm sorry if I'm getting meticulous, I'm talking about the wrong side of the Holocaust, about the bureaucratical part of it. But there were no lists of people getting to death camps to die. And when people have the imagination of Auschwitz and people have numbers, etc., people who got numbers in Auschwitz are people who came to Auschwitz to work. People who came to Auschwitz to die, and this is most of the population, did not get a number. They were brought by transports into Birkenau, which is a death camp and not Auschwitz one, the work camp or the concentration camp. And many of them, more or less straight from the trains, went to the gas chambers. And there is no need to tattoo or register anyone you're just about to kill. And this is the case in most of the towns and cities and people about Polish Jewry. So there is, from Treblinka, there are no lists. There would never be any lists. And so the information about what happened to those people and their fates is really, there's a very slim chance that we would really be able to understand and know for sure what happened to those people, unfortunately.
Thank you, Matan. It's all heartbreaking. I'm going to allow for 2 more questions. This next one is going to be answered by Polaron. Polaron has offered to answer another previous 2 questions, and I missed that. So this is Lena's question for you, Polaron. Is there a place where Jewish school records from before the war are kept in Poland, for example, in Krakow? Is that you, Eva?
Sorry, Esther, I don't think Eva is here with us. So if you would like to answer, or if Matan, would you be able to take this question?
Sorry, sorry.
Yes, sure. So I'm sorry Eva's not here, send my regards. But there are places where you can find information from schools. Once again, it really depends on what kind of school and where exactly. There were public schools with public records, and in some of them, those records were kept. Many people were going to like the social schools, like if the Bund or Tarbut organization. So it's practically a private school, right? It's a foundation who opens a school, which is public accessible. Sometimes it's for free, but it does not belong to the state and state organs. So many of those school records did not survive because the organization itself did not survive and kept its records. Tarbut did not operate in Poland after the war because the communist apparatus and the state apparatus did not allow it to operate. And so Tarbut school documents were never kept, and we can search for them. So school records are quite rare. They do exist in some places. Krakow is actually a place where they can be found. And there is even a search engine specifically for Krakow, which is maintained by the Krakow JCC, the Jewish Community Center in Krakow. And I would encourage you to write to them and see if they can help you in finding out those records, or do it through Polaron. I'm sure that they are also very able in getting you to those people and places.
That's an excellent answer and very helpful, I think, for many people. So there's another question, which is general, which I think will help everybody if we haven't managed to answer all of the questions, of which there were very many, and Matan has done an excellent job in responding to. Are there any professionals who could do the research for a fee, like a private detective? So who would one approach? So it's a question.
Okay, so the short answer is yes. There are people who are doing this, and I will not do an advertising session of this, but you can search online. You can find some of those people or ask for reference. I'm sure that in this group, or if you would talk to colleagues, you can find some references to people. I wanted to say one more thing, which is extremely important, and I'm sorry I didn't have it in the presentation. In many towns, there is a local person who is very interested in the history of the local Jewish community, and they are sometimes collect information, have some kind of mausoleum or little museum at home. And in many cases, they are in contact with descendants of the Polish Jews from this town who came there in the last 20 years or so. Those people are in many cases a huge help in being a hub to connect people together, understand. Sometimes those people are also local, like experts in finding information and have documents. And sometimes they are really amateur in this, but their physical existence and the fact that people approach them and the information and contacts and contact information that they gather along the years are invaluable. The POLIN Museum is also engaging with those people, and we have an annual prize given to those people, which we can call guardians of the memory, and there are different names for this. And different organizations, other organizations in Poland are also engaging with local experts and local guardians and custodians of the memory of the Jewish communities. Those people are sometimes even more helpful than professional researchers or guidelines. So try and understand who those people are in the towns that you are interested in. And I would say contact those people.
Yeah, that's actually true. That's been my experience as well. Certainly guardians of memory in Łódź, and also private people in all of the small towns. Am I right, Matan, when I say that most, even small towns, not just Łódź and not just Warsaw, have books of residence that you can access? Is that correct? All like Kalisz, Sieradz, do they have books of residence as well?
Yeah. So first, all towns and villages had books of residence. The only question is, did this book of residence survive? There's even two types of book of residence. There's this ludności stałej, permanent residence, and this is księgi meldunkowe, which is a book of residence for a specific address. But Kalisz and Sieradz, I know for a fact that those records have survived and are to be searched in local archives. But we can start with understanding that every place had this book of residence. The question is, did this book of residence survive or not?
Matan, I don't know what to say to you. That was such an informative and expansive talk that you gave us. Many of us have done some research, but you covered, I think, you touched every stone that one could possibly touch in the future of our own research. So thank you very much for your time and energy this evening. I'd also like to thank Eleanor Truong of Polaron and Polaron themselves, at Bieva Hussein, who always so generously give of their time and their technical support to us. Franek, thank you for visiting us. That's been a pleasure. But also I'd like to thank Ezra, the president of ASPJ, and the board of ASPJ, all of whom contribute a great deal behind the scenes to a very interesting organization and support everything that we do. So thank you, everybody, for a really great night. And well done to you, Matan, and hello, Franek, and well done too. Thank you, and good night.
Thank you, Estelle and Ezra, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Oh, there's a, very interesting talk from somebody called Sue. All the best.